Hello, everyone. This is Cassie Powers with the National Association of State Energy Officials, or NASEO. Thank you for joining today's our webinar on alternative fuel vehicle technology. We'll be providing an update of a number of different technologies that are eligible for funding under the settlement with EPA and VW. I'm going to start us off by giving a really quick overview of the agenda. We're going to start with a summary of the settlement as well as a brief round of speaker introductions. We'll then dive right into the content on electric buses, natural gas medium and heavy duty vehicle applications, and propane medium and heavy duty vehicles. Just a couple of quick notes on the admin side of things. Everyone is on mute. If you have a question, please feel free to type it into the chat box or raise your hand. We will pause after presentations if we have enough time to ask questions of each of the different alternative fuels. We will also have time at the end of the presentations for some Q&A. So with that, I'm going to just dive into a really quick overview of the settlement between EPA and Volkswagen. The company of Volkswagen agreed to spend up to $14.7 billion to settle allegations of cheating emissions for their diesel vehicles. The settlement funds are going to be used to buy back or modify the vehicles. That's the $10 billion amount, and also to support national and state level projects to reduce NOx emissions. So the portion of the settlement that we're going to be discussing today is the $2.7 billion that is going into the Environmental Mitigation Trust. States that become beneficiaries of the Environmental Mitigation Trust are able to invest in 10 different eligible mitigation action areas. Each of these project areas are designed to decrease NOx emissions. This is the high-level list of the different types of projects that states will be able to invest in through the Environmental Mitigation Trust. For the purposes of today's webinar, we're going to be focusing on the first three categories: large trucks, medium trucks, and buses. So we'll only be discussing the on-road applications for alternative fuels eligible for funding under the settlement. We'll likely have a webinar the next month or two that will also explore some of the alternative fuel technology updates for the off-road portion. So with that, we wanted to dive right into the presentations. We're going to start with an overview of the electric vehicles that are eligible for funding under the settlement, with a focus on electric buses. Kent Laycock at Proterra will be giving an update of some of the new technologies in the electric bus world, followed by Leslie Udy of NREL, who will also be talking about the results of some of their studies with electric buses. We'll then transition into a conversation on natural gas vehicles with Hugh Donnell of Cummins Westport, talking about some of the new technologies in natural gas medium and heavy duty engines. And finally, we'll hear from the propane industry with Tucker Perkins of the Propane Education and Research Council, giving an overview of the medium and heavy duty propane on-road applications, and Chelsea Uphouse of Roush, who will give an update as well of some of the technologies from her company. With that, we're going to dive right in. I'm going to transition over to Kent from Proterra. Kent, I'm going to be transitioning to your screen. We should be able to hear from you in just a moment. And Kent, we can't hear you. Are you able?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Perfect. We can hear you now. Thank you. And we can see your screen.
Okay, great. So the focus of what I'm going to be talking about today is the evolving zero-emission bus market in America and on kind of in general, as well as some driving forces behind the growth in the zero-emission bus market, and then some more specific information about Proterra buses. So we'll get started right now. And so the first thing I wanted to just talk about is, how big is this trend of zero-emission buses? Because frequently I speak to people and they're virtually amazed that there is such a thing as a battery electric bus that can actually go out and service routes and do the full duty cycle that a transit agency may need. And so, what we're seeing is that the growth across the U.S. is fueled by multiple cities and transit agencies are passing resolutions that they are calling to go 100% in the electric vehicle market. It's independent. I'm based in California, but we're as you'll see soon enough, we are reaching a critical mass across the U.S., and it's really independent of a particular red state, blue state type of issue, because it's really more of a getting to be a CFO decision with the added benefit of all the reductions in greenhouse gases. And it's an international trend as well. As you can see from this chart, the way the projections are, we are regularly approached by international manufacturers that are looking to do a partnership with us. So just to see you on a kind of a macro level, here's what Proterra has experienced. In Q4 2015, we had roughly 15 customers, and then if you fast forward to right now, we are at greater than 31 customers. Those are the ones that are announced in all those orders, and you can see from the differences in the map that it's a pretty dramatic change in the space of less than 2 years in terms of the growth and the numbers. The numbers attached to each bubble are the amount of buses that are ordered, and you see up there in King County as many as 76 and 25 in Philadelphia. So we are starting to progress from single-digit kind of what we call demo pilot orders to larger scale orders, and in fact, a number of transit agencies across the U.S. are putting out big RFPs, including New York. They're going to plan to electrify all of Brooklyn by 2025 with 500 buses. Miami's got an RFP out, Chicago, and also LA Metro has an RFP out, all for zero-emission buses. So, what's kind of driving this this growth? And it's that electric buses are economic and sustainable. You get the lowest cost per passenger and the lowest CO2 per passenger mile. Now, so what is also driving these economics, and that's really that the price of the EV bus has decreased on a year-over-year basis dramatically. When we started, we were at $1.2 million. Now we're roughly in the neighborhood of about $750,000, as are some of the other electric bus manufacturers out there, of which there's a number of them. And we went from being almost $750,000 greater in the zero-emission bus market than a comparable diesel hybrid or CNG or diesel bus, to rapidly approaching parity with diesel hybrid. We think that we'll be there in the next couple of years with diesel hybrid and continue to drive down costs to reach parity with CNG and diesel. And now what's driving that cost down? And what's driving that is the improvements and the growth in U.S. EV sales. As you can see, going back to 2011, and the growth in electric vehicle sales has had a direct correlation on the cost of energy storage. It was at roughly $1,200 a kilowatt hour in terms of energy storage. It's been driving down to $700, and the numbers now down to approximately in between $350 and $400 a kilowatt hour for the energy storage that you would put on a zero-emission bus. And that directly correlates to our prior cost at a 1.2, now down to 750, and continuing to drive that price down. And it's a global phenomenon. Tesla is now opening up their Gigafactory, so there's multiple sources for energy storage. They're all competing against each other. Batteries are highly commoditized, and we continue to see the growth driving down. And it's not just us. If you look at this Bloomberg projection, they are at roughly right now approximately about, they're saying about $380 a kilowatt hour, and it's going to drop down by 2025 to somewhere in the $180 range. And even before we hit that number in terms of cost of energy storage, we will have reached price parity with all the other technology options that are available in the heavy duty marketplace. Because it's not just buses. This will also correlate directly with goods movement at the ports, heavy duty drayage, and that kind of mileage distance in between the ports and taking the containers to the rail lines. So now, just a little bit about the Proterra bus. It's a purpose-built bus that offers the highest performance and flexibility in terms of your energy storage, and we also have offer multiple charging options and multiple ways to make the purchase, because as I showed you earlier, we are still more expensive than a diesel or CNG competitor. Now, what makes us different? Well, our buses are made of high-tech carbon fiber reinforced composite material. Think Formula One race cars or offshore power boat racing or like Learjet hulls. So it's super strong, it's lightweight, it doesn't rust. We have customers in New England that will show us a comparison of buses after 4 or 5 years. Our buses have no rust. Their buses, the other parts of their fleet are covered in rust. And LA Metro just has put out some information on some of their composite body buses that are looking like they're going to last almost 18 years, the shells, without flex, without degradation in the body. And that composite material allows our bus to be lighter, have more seated passenger space, because the design of the bus is such that the batteries are down outside the passenger compartment, lining the floor of the bus. So, and that lighter weight also contributes to a higher efficiency rating, which basically allows you to get more miles per kilowatt hour on your bus. As I mentioned, we have multiple charging options. When we first started, all we had was the high power overhead, which will be kind of featured in the upcoming NREL study that you guys are going to hear about shortly. But now we've launched a depot charger at the request of our customers. They wanted to more mirror their fossil fuel experience. They want to be able to charge overnight and run all day. And what we've done, along with one other manufacturer, is we've chosen to use the plug-in standard that's across the board accepted in the U.S. and used for all the passenger vehicles, J1772 CCS. That allows that a municipality, transit agency working with their public works department or even other fleet vehicles could use the same charging infrastructure for their buses that they use for light-duty vehicles, medium-duty trucks, repair trucks, fleet cars for the city. So they don't have to have multiple charging scenarios. They can use one technology and use it for multiple options. Now, this charging standard is widely deployed, and it's ubiquitous, and there's a host of entities out there that know how to install this to great advantage. And that's one of the other reasons, is that this is an installation that is almost, they've got standard groups within Black & Veatch and a host of other, Schneider Electric. There's multiple contractors out there across the U.S. that have deployed this type of charging infrastructure that makes it an easy transition for the transit agencies. Now, as I said, it's you'll see here that we are right now not at cost parity. We're more expensive, but we have a lower operational life cycle cost over the life of the vehicle, which, we haven't reached a 12-year life cycle, which is what's mandated by the federal government. But the numbers that we're achieving now with our second-generation bus indicate to us the following numbers in terms of total cost of ownership savings in the neighborhood of roughly $400,000 to $450,000, depending on how much your electricity is. And that's, once again, that's over a full 12-year federally mandated life cycle. And frankly, most transit agencies keep their buses on the road a little bit longer, 14, 15 years even, which would increase their savings. And, electric motors are very simple. They've been around for forever. Fewer parts, less maintenance, et cetera. So that's, one of the drivers of being able to recover that total cost of ownership in relation to the higher upfront cost. But we realize that's still a problem. So what Proterra has done is designed a number of purchase options that have been vetted with the FTA, where, for example, we will do a battery lease where your capital purchase of your bus, it mimics the cost of a diesel or natural gas bus, and then you pay for the lease with your operational costs, what you would have spent on fuel, whether it's diesel or natural gas, as well as your maintenance costs. And we've recently signed a number of these types of deals, as well as municipal capital lease, where they just lease the bus with an option to purchase at the end. And we also offer short-term, medium-term rental programs for agencies that want to dip their toes in the water. 3, 6 months, we've had a number of agencies try that method and then turn that into actual sales. So all in all, you know, the zero-emission bus world is here. It's ready for deployment. Zero-emission buses can handle virtually over 90% of the transit routes out in America. And as you've seen from our customer growth, it's really a phenomenon that's spreading across the country. So thank you for your time. Hello?
Thanks so much, Kent. That was great. We're now transitioning to our next presentation, and Leslie will have time for questions of both Kent and Leslie following her presentation. Thanks so much.
Okay, can you see my screen?
I can, thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about some of the electric bus evaluations that we've been doing over the past few years. For those who aren't familiar with NREL, we're one of the DOE national laboratories, and we're the only one that's focused on energy efficiency and renewable energy. So our role in evaluating zero-emission bus technologies to act as that third-party evaluator. We're technology neutral, and we use an established evaluation protocol to look at all of the fleets that we evaluate. We provide that feedback back to the government, to whether it's federal, state, or local, to understand the status and decide where funding might be needed for necessary R&D. We share information back with the transit industry so that the industry can see what the common, the comparison to the baseline technologies and make informed purchase decisions. There are a number of OEMs besides Proterra that are offering electric buses, and for me, electric buses or zero-emission buses include both battery electric and fuel cell electric. The rest of the presentation is going to focus on fuel cell or battery electric, but here's a list of manufacturers that are providing a number of different sizes for battery buses and fuel cell electric buses. That includes BYD, Eldorado National has a fuel cell electric bus. Gillig has recently started a demo of their first battery electric bus. New Flyer does both battery and fuel cell electric buses. There's Nova has a battery bus, and then of course Proterra has battery buses, and some of these buses include either fast charge or plug-in with the extended range. You've already heard Kent mention those from Proterra. So to look at what our objectives are with our evaluations, several years ago in 2012, DOE and the Federal Transit Administration established targets. These targets are shown in a selection of the targets are shown here in this table. Now, they were developed originally for fuel cell electric buses, but the performance targets are the same as what you'd want any bus to meet, so we apply those to our battery electric bus evaluations as well. And I mentioned we look at them compared to the targets, but we also compare them to conventional technologies in the same service. This chart shows you the status of the battery electric bus fleets that we're working with. Right now, we're working with 4 fleets, but this includes the 2 that we actually have data that's been published. That includes both Foothill Transit and the King County Metro, and both those happen to be Proterra fleets, and I'm going to show you some detailed data once we move forward from this, but this kind of gives you the overall status as we see it right now. The columns show you, if you look at the bus with the minimum, the bus with the maximum, and the fleet average, if you look at all those buses as if they were one fleet, and you can see that some of the targets that have been set have already been met. We're seeing 4x fuel economy if you compare on a diesel gallon equivalent. The road call frequency is much higher than the targets for bus miles between road call. The target's 4,000. For energy storage system, it would be similar to what we'd see for the fuel cell. We want to see at least 20,000. You can see it's much, much higher than that. So first we'll talk about our experience with Foothill Transit in West Covina, California. And they started their battery electric bus. They had a demo, a pilot project with 3 buses, but our evaluation starts with their 12 buses that they got and put in service in April 2014. We've been following this fleet for a couple of years now, and we have one report that's been published, and we have another one that's in its final stage and should be published and posted in the next 2 weeks. So 12 buses, these are the 35-foot Proterra buses with the fast charge on route. And we have comparison, is their baseline fleet is the CNG NABI fleet with that are 42-foot. So this first chart shows you the efficiency, and I mentioned we look at it in diesel gallon equivalent. So for both the CNG and the battery buses, we haven't converted those to diesel gallon equivalent. So the battery bus is in green, the CNG bus is in the blue. You can see that we've got about 4x higher than the CNG buses. In this case, the cost of electricity makes it a little higher to operate per mile because of demand charges. And then if you look at that light gray line, that gives you the average daily high temperature for the month. So you can see in some cases you have a little bit of a fluctuation based on accessories. You might see the efficiency go up or down, whether it's summer or winter driving. This chart shows you availability, and our availability numbers are if the bus is available for morning pullout, and this is the monthly average for the fleet. So you've got the battery buses in green, CNG buses in blue, and the general transit target of 85% availability. And you can see that both the battery buses and CNG buses, they were new when they went into service, and they have really good availability over the time. The vast majority of the time it's over the target. The few times that that was not over the target, it was usually due to bus issues. So for the overall availability for the battery buses during this period was 90%. Looking at what the reasons for unavailability are, these 2 pie charts show you the 90% availability, 10% of that time the buses were unavailable, and the second pie chart breaks down the reasons for unavailability. And you can see if you count the preventive maintenance, which is your PM, and the bus, more than half the time it was bus issues, things like doors, wheelchair lifts, things like that that might cause a problem with the bus. 2.8% of that time it was some electric drive issues. In some cases those were due to some software upgrades that once they were done, they didn't have issues with the problems after that. If you look at reliability, so transits measure reliability as miles between road call. And these 2 charts, so if you look at the chart on the top, that gives you the overall miles between road call for the battery buses and the CNG buses, and the ultimate target set by DOE and FTA of 4,000 miles between road call. You can see that we're already meeting that target with the battery buses. What this numbers is, it's chargeable road call, so it doesn't include things for like head signs or fare boxes or things like that. It's something that would stop the bus from being operated on route or would cause a safety issue and have to be pulled from route. So you can see the battery buses that we're seeing right now have met that target. If you look at the lower chart, it shows you propulsion miles between road calls. So if you look at only the road calls that are due to problems with the propulsion system, that's the light green line for the battery electric buses, and it's hovering right along the target for the battery systems. Then if you look at the orange line, that's if you look at road calls that are only due to the energy storage system, and you can see from the chart that it's a steady increase, meaning they're having no road calls for the battery systems itself, which is a really positive for the technology. So that was Foothill. Let's switch to King County Metro. They have Proterra buses as well, but these are their 40-foot Catalyst buses. There's 3 of them, and they're also fast charging. They have 8 more buses on order. Interesting thing about King County, we have 3 different baselines for King County. We've got diesel hybrid, and electric trolley, and all of them are new. So we've got some great apples to apples. They're all 40-foot buses. You can see some of the specifications for the buses at King County. If you look at the efficiency for the King County buses, we've got a report that just was posted that has this data in it, but also diesel gallon equivalent. You can see the battery buses are still more than 3 times higher than the baselines in similar service. You can see the diesel fleet, the standard diesel fleet, in the brownish color, and the hybrids in the blue, and 2.6% higher than the diesel buses and the diesel hybrid buses. Once again, the cost of electricity for this fleet, they have some high demand charges, so they have a little bit higher cost per mile at this point because of the charge for electricity. If you look at availability for the KC Metro fleet, you can see all 4 of our baseline buses, the trolley fleet included here, and they're all right about the target or over the target, including the battery bus fleet. The stacked bars at the bottom show you by month the number of days unavailable by the category. So you can see that bus maintenance is the primary category that's caused issues, followed by a few issues for the electric drive system. And at the bottom, you can see the overall availability for the period, with the battery buses being at 84% over that time period. One of the things that we've talked about with our fleets is what are the remaining challenges and barriers for zero-emission buses. And for battery buses, the fleet needs to work on build out of opportunity charging stations if that's what they're going to do, if they're going to do fast charge stations. Also look at how to expand to larger fleets for garage chargers. If you're going to plug them in overnight, you've got to have a spot to do that, and that is can be a challenge for fleets. It's not unsurmountable, but it's something they have to think about as they add battery buses to their fleet. Routes for the technology. If you're using fast charge, you need to think about what routes you have and where you can put those fast chargers to accommodate those routes. If you're doing in-depot charging with longer range, then you can use it on other routes within the service. The challenges of electricity rates and demand charges is one of the big ones that our fleets have seen, and most of them have worked with the local utilities to try to work different rates, waive demand charges, or at least get rates for special EV rates that would keep them from having to spend a lot of their money for electricity. I mentioned scaling up for larger field fleets, that they need to figure out how they can accommodate plugging in and charging a larger number of buses and parking them. Then one of the things that we need to see is the training transition for the maintenance staff, and this is happening with some of our fuel cell fleets, and I think we're starting to see that with the battery fleets as well. We need to see that maintenance being transitioned to the actual fleet. And then supply chain for parts. Some of our earlier demos, we had issues with one supplier, and so if that supplier goes out of business, suddenly you're in trouble, and you need to be able to get those parts from another source. So I'm watching the supply chain get better and have more manufacturers to supply those parts so that the cost can come down as well, and availability. All of our reports are available on our website, and I've given the information here.
Thanks very much, Leslie. That was great. Let's pause and see if there are any questions for Kent or Leslie. Again, you can feel free to either type a question into the chat box or use the raise hand function on the webinar. I'll then unmute you and you can ask your question. Alternatively, you can send an email to me. That's cpowers@naseo.org, and I can read the question aloud. I'm not showing any raised hands or questions in the chat box, so I think we will move on to our next presentation. Again, we'll have an opportunity at the end to also ask questions of each of the presenters. And so now, Kent, excuse me, not Kent, Hugh, I'm wondering if you can hear us?
I can. Thank you, Kathy.
Great. All right. We're going to be clicking through Hugh's presentation from my screen. So, Hugh, you can just say next when you need to advance to our next slide.
Good. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to this group today about our natural gas products and how we think this is going to be a technology that is going to solve a lot of challenges for many states, and we're looking forward to a great deal of support from the mitigation settlement that funds that are available to help propel a faster adoption rate. But to meet that demand, we are going to talk a little bit today about what we call our moving to zero product, which is basically cleaning up our engines just a quantum leap, about 90%,
And then we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the different engines, OEM availability, and then where we see the this business going. So next slide. We're talking about the sustainability, which is a sort of a primary focus with our natural gas products, and the technology that we have developed over the last few years has gotten us to a level that by California's optional emission levels standards, it puts us at what is known as near zero, which is 0.02 gram NOx. And we'll talk a little bit about that and how actually we are exceeding that limit, or I should say that standard, and actually going below zero on greenhouse gas as well. Next slide is, as you can see by this slide, the non-attainment zones around the United States, but obviously there is a great deal of challenges in California, and California is sort of leading the way with respect to encouraging and enhancing and partnering with us to develop a product that will meet their needs. And I have a slide on that we think is a path forward for California, certainly with natural gas products. Next slide is basically our new marketing standard or new marketing terms right now is move to zero. We are very close to zero right now with our natural gas products. In 2018, at the end of this year, we release 2 of our 3 engines will be at 0.02 gram NOx, and a 6.7 liter, excuse me, a 6.7 liter engine will come in at about half of that. So this by 0.1 gram NOx. So pretty significant when you compare that with other combustion engines, particular diesel engines that are at 0.2 gram NOx. So we think that's a pretty big deal, and I think we've got quite a few partners along the way that believe in the same thing. So we're really excited about this. Next slide is move to zero. It's the equivalent, our electric equivalent NOx chart. And obviously you can see where everything kind of lines up. The 0.2 gram NOx column to the left, far left, is the diesel standard that is available today. And as you can see, the other equivalencies moving further to the right, we will be at, as I said, at 0.02 gram NOx with our natural gas products. And we think that's the standard in which we will be certified at. Next slide. This graph basically is the move to zero with a sub-zero carbon intensity. When you use our natural gas engines with renewable natural gas, you go into a negative number. So if you are an operator or a fleet or a property who is looking for a maximum amount of greenhouse gas reduction and NOx reduction combined, we think our engines get you to that point very quickly. Next slide, slide number 7. As you look at California and the goals that they have set out to achieve through 2030 and through 2050, the original path in which they were in pursuit of would not be able to achieve their objectives by 2023 using conventional power up to this point. With our 0.02 gram NOx products, and depending on how quickly you want to get there, you can exceed their target goals and bring it up sooner, again, depending on when you wanted to achieve those objectives. So you would obviously have to change out an awful lot of equipment in California. There's about 800,000 commercial vehicles operating in California right now, so that would be quite a transition. But again, their original path to achieving their objectives would not get it with the 0.2 gram NOx certified levels on diesel engines or natural gas engines. Will take it much lower and sooner than what they were projecting. So we think that is a very good story. Next slide, number 8. So as I mentioned before, we are moving all of our and upgrading a lot of our engines for 2018. Both the 12 liter and the 9 liter will be at 0.02 gram NOx. They have onboard diagnostics will be deployed, and we have what I consider to be a top-notch option for anybody who would look to move their properties to ultra-low and a very clean product. The 6.7 liter engine we're releasing right now for school bus applications. Again, that will be a 0.1 gram NOx, and we are in discussions right now in getting funding to move that product down to a 0.02 gram NOx as well. All three of these engines with renewable natural gas improve your carbon intensity footprint significantly, and as I said, if you're running with renewable natural gas, you're below zero, which we think is very appealing to a lot of properties. Slide number 9. So this is sort of the basic information of the profile for the 12-liter engine. Typically, that's being used in less than load truck applications, Class 8 trucks. Amazon, UPS, FedEx will be operating those. UPS is the largest fleet in the United States that's running our natural gas 12-liter engines, and they will be buying a significant amount of our near zero, or what we call our ultra-low NOx engine, and they are actually running with renewable natural gas. So they'll get the benefit of that, and that helps their environmental sustainability program corporately. And they're not alone. There's a lot of other companies, including Amazon, who want to have the cleanest footprint possible, and we think our engines will get them there. So the 12-liter engine is good for refuse, port drayage, regional haul distribution, dedicated lanes, Class 8 trucks. That's predominantly where you'll find that engine, and that engine is available through all of the truck OEMs in North America. Next slide, number 10. A 9-liter engine, again, is 0.02 gram NOx available today, and that will be OBD certified by the beginning of next year. So as we launch, there will be a few enhancements, product upgrades. Target markets for that application is bus, school bus, truck, transit, and refuse. It is a pretty dominant engine. It's been around since in this variant since and the 0.2 gram NOx variant has been around since 2008. And again, we're going to obsolete that 0.2 gram product at the end of this year. And the only engines that we will have on the 9-liter will be a 0.02 gram NOx, which is the lowest standard. Next slide, just to sort of drive that point home just a little bit more. We have a CARB certificate here, and as you can see, our the measurements, NOx measurements there, we actually operate that engine at 0.01 gram NOx, not 0.02 gram NOx. We are actually operating below what the standard is, and I think most recent studies coming out of Riverside, University of California, Riverside, is that our engines actually operate cleaner at the lower speeds and lower idle applications, whereas some of the diesel engines they've been testing actually go up. So we think this is, again, this is a solution that is available today. It is the lowest cost option, and it gets you to emission levels that exceed what the expectations were by any government standard set today. So the last slide, there are on engines here in slide number 12. I'm sorry, yeah, 12. I'm sorry, 13. 13, I'm sorry, Casey, can we go back to 12? That's a 6.7 liter engine. And that engine, thank you. That engine is releasing, limited production was released early this year, and target markets were school bus applications. But at target markets are shuttle bus, delivery trucks, delivery vans, service vehicles, yard spotters. We're seeing this picked up in a lot of different applications right now, particularly in the port areas. So we're seeing that in the yard spotter pieces. 1 or 2 OEMs who are really promoting that right now, certainly in the Port of LA and Long Beach. And we think that's going to be a good solution. And it is, like all of our engines, don't require any unusual or extreme infrastructure to take care of this product. Our engines are built off Cummins diesel engines, and that's about 80% of the parts are already manufactured on the diesel side. We've just converted these engines over to natural gas, so it is a time-proven product. It is available, again, through all of the OEMs in North America. And we're looking to expand the use of this 6.7-liter engine to some other markets very shortly here. So slide number 13. So we just talked high level here on the why move to, move to slide number 14, Casey. So from an environmental durability standpoint, these engines will be 90% below standard in NOx and 90% below in PM, and CO equivalent is about 16% below standard. When you're using renewable natural gas, obviously that is the most desired way to get to the extremely low levels of emissions, but also helping greenhouse gas reduction as well. So we think this is a pretty good solution, a very good solution, and we're beginning to see more and more of these products being purchased by transit companies, school bus companies. So it's beginning to get traction, and again, it's available today, and it's the lowest cost option. Slide number 15 is one of the things that's really kind of important to this whole thing is our product is not disruptive to existing infrastructure that's out there today. It doesn't require an extraordinary amount of facilities or hardware or just the refueling sites, which are pretty well populated across the country today. So it fits the current transportation and people and goods movement truck models. No need for radical changes in vehicle technology. Fits the current community models. No need for radical changes in transportation infrastructure, support infrastructure. Cummins has about 2,000 certified dealers in the United States, in North America actually, and for those who are not don't host natural gas in their areas, should they show up, they are all capable of getting certified to take care of the product, but we have got a very strong support infrastructure in North America to take care of our natural gas products, and again, that's all in place, and we don't have to make any changes to make that one work. But also meets our energy source goals as well. So we delivers on energy independent initiatives and delivers fossil fuel reduction initiatives within renewable natural gas. So very key components to the whole discussion. Again, at the end of the day, many people are, I think, asking as they start moving towards whether it's state governments trying to enhance or improve their air quality, or whether they have some non-attainment zones that they need to address somehow. We think this product is, again, it's available. It's available today. The 12-liter will be available at 0.02 gram NOx starting in 2018, and the 9-liter is available today, and then the 6.7-liter engine is available at 0.1 gram NOx. On slide number 16, it's sort of the way we look at this is not just Southern California. So as you can see, the map to the left-hand side is the non-attainment zones in the United States. And as you can see, this map overlay to the right-hand side is actually where we can ping the ECMs in those trucks. And that's where our 12-liter natural gas engines are operating today. So you can see a high concentration on the West Coast, Florida, Texas, and then up the Eastern Seaboard, and up around Michigan and those areas up there. So more and more fleets are stepping into natural gas. We think that it is a solution for resolving non-attainment issues that some states are facing today, and but it's not at a cost penalty. It is, again, the lowest cost option available today. And with that, I'll hand it back to Casey.
Thanks so much, Hugh. That was excellent. Again, if folks have questions, feel free to type it in the chat box and or raise your hand. You can also send questions directly to me at cpowers@nasio.org. You can also send questions after the fact, and we'll be able to pass them along to each of our speakers. I do see one raised hand, which we'll pause for just a moment. All right, and Katahun, you are unmuted. Please ask your questions. Okay, I don't think we're able to hear you right now. We'll come back at the end of the presentations and we'll try to get the question then. Again, feel free to raise your hand if you have a question. And with that, we are going to transition to Tucker Perkins, who will give us an overview of the propane industry. Tucker, we should be able to see your screen in just a moment.
Okay.
And we see it.
Okay, good. And we'll get this thing beginning here. So it's a great opportunity to really always talk about propane. Just quickly, I represent the Propane Education and Research Council. So we advocate for the fuel. We're not going to try to sell you propane or sell you propane vehicles, but we are trying to make sure that the vehicles that are out there and the future of propane is really robust for the users. And that's what we'll talk about over the next 10 minutes or so. I'm going to finish today by handing over the presentation to Chelsea Uphouse, who's with Roush, and she'll really finish, I think, making the final exclamation point about how propane really is the fuel of the future. But for today, I really want to talk specifically about how we view the VW settlement, and we tend to focus on the school bus. And I think for us, the school bus is arguably the perfect vehicle as we talk about VW funds, in that it's deployed in every state, widely deployed in every state, really is a meaningful contributor to emissions given the mile profile and the length of time they drive. Frankly, the age profile is relatively old, so taking the buses off the road and putting new ones on the road would make not only a significant contribution to emissions reduction, but it also makes a meaningful contribution to the communities as they really reduce their operating costs. So it seems to be kind of a win-win for us in that you reduce emissions, you're reducing operating costs, you're reducing total costs, you're making the school system financially stronger. And as we tend to say, it's really not about saving dollars for a school system. It's about employing more teachers and making the materials that the children use to learn, it's a stronger thing. So I will say that while we are wildly supportive of buses, for those of you listening, everything I'm going to say really is applicable to the other vehicles that are operating on propane autogas. In fact, the medium-duty truck is almost exactly the same bus. A port tractor. So as we talk about port applications and freight moving, a port tractor is almost this exact same bus, with many of them using the same engine. So it's a critical story for us, and a story that really, when we focus on NOx emissions, we love that story. And while we want to confine this conversation to school buses, certainly, in our world, the environment is much broader than just that. If we look forward and focus just for a moment on NOx emissions, clearly one of the things you can do is just by taking the pre-2000 model buses out of the marketplace, just because the standards are so much more stringent today, that would reduce your NOx emissions over 90%. So, and I think that's a given. So I think most of you would sit there and say, okay, well, I want to replace my old diesel buses with a new diesel bus, because arguably you still get a great reduction in your NOx emissions. I think the point we love to make here is that if you would replace a new diesel bus with a new propane bus, you'll still reduce your NOx emissions over 11%. And it might vary 1% or 2% depending on brand. But in general, we're operating at 0.16 on the NOx emissions instead of 0.2 for most of that. But even more importantly, and I think Chelsea will hammer this point home, we too have become very aware of where we needed to be with NOx emissions. So no longer do we think 0.2 is the standard, 0.16 that most of our modern vehicles are certified to operate, but we agree that the new standard should be as low as possible. And I think Cummins, frankly, has set the bar at 0.02. And so we are making every effort to get there. And the class of vehicles we have now will be at 0.05 that out in the marketplace today. And if you look at that, that's an 81% reduction in NOx emissions. So I think those are critical numbers to remember. But if you really to choose best in class, even compared to a new diesel bus today, you would be reducing your NOx emissions over 80%. And I think that exactly is what this VW settlement money is to be used for. I keep this little chart with me because I think in the context of VW, it's certainly about NOx, but in the context of all of us, working with our sustainability hats and trying to drive emissions down across the country, I like to have this chart. So a school bus is clearly a medium-duty vehicle, but the conversation at some point can be bigger than NOx. It can be about greenhouse gases, where you see, again, propane enjoys some performance enhancement for both greenhouse gases against diesel and gasoline. You can see these numbers. I don't talk here about particulate matter. I will talk about it as we talk about new technology, but rest assured, particulate matter is significantly reduced from most any other fuel, gasoline, diesel. So again, a very strong story, I think, to use propane if the measurement is just NOx, but if the measurement is even bigger than NOx, it's about gases across the spectrum of criteria pollutants, you'll see either a similar profile or a reduction in almost every criteria pollutant. It's important. The other emission I love to talk about, because we don't talk about it enough, and obviously it's a huge improvement as we talk about a propane fueled engine, is just noise. And that's really been an eye-opening statistic for us with the school buses, that the value of a quieter engine rumbling through your neighborhood, the value of a quieter engine to a driver in better control of the bus, a driver more aware of the external and internal surroundings, and just even what that does to the children on the bus in terms of calmness. It's just noise is clearly a pollutant, an emission, and I want to talk more about it. So I think that's the final emission that we really are proud of, that we've made significant reductions in. And I think we are always proud as an industry to talk about how we deliver all of those investments at the cheapest price. And I think you'll hear us make the statement that in almost every reasonable application of the VW settlement monies as it relates to the Environmental Mitigation Trust Fund, you cannot make a better investment if the criteria is dollars invested per ton of NOx reduced. That when you bring all that together, we think propane autogas in a school bus using these modern engines represents arguably the best investment you can make. I think one of the reasons our investment is so reasonable, and I always like to call it out, is infrastructure. Our infrastructure is easy, it's portable, it doesn't pollute, a lot of advantages over conventional diesel and gasoline, but just a lot of advantages in general. And I always like to call that out because I think that is a significant benefit far beyond cost. The initial cost is easy, but it's all about the operating cost, the ease of use, the speed of fueling, a significant benefit as we talk about propane autogas. I think the last thing that I really wanted to talk about is why making an investment today in propane autogas in the specific terms of the VW settlement, why that makes sense. And I think why it would make sense is that you're making an investment today in a bus that arguably is going to be in your system 10, 12, 15 years. So you need to have some comfort that that technology is going to continue to develop and innovate along the line. So let's just talk about a couple things. One is here today. We've changed the fueling nozzle. We really advocate for this style nozzle. It's cut our emissions tenfold. You can never use the word emission free, but for all intents and purposes, no one is ever aware of any emissions. You don't hear it, you don't see it, you don't smell it. It's made the whole process so much safer. This is technology we brought over from Europe a couple years ago, and now we really standardized on it around the world. But if nothing else, it's a simple acknowledgement of every detail is being looked at as we think about how to move this whole industry forward. I'll show you a picture of a direct injection, but before I even talk about that, I want to talk about the fuel because there is a lot of excitement about renewable natural gas. We're well aware of that. And we don't talk about it much in the U.S., although we're just finishing up now our studies, really driven to us by California and the low carbon fuel standard, because we knew we had to be able to talk about renewable propane. Renewable propane exists today in refineries across Europe and Asia. We're in contract conversations now with multiple refineries in the U.S. that are capable of making renewable propane. We really love what we see for the carbon intensity values. And so again, we're not only innovating in the dispenser side, now we're innovating in the fuel side. And finally, I think for us, fortunately, the engine side, the innovation was occurring because in order just to meet the CAFE standards, you see most engine manufacturers going to direct injection And just, I think by the miracles of chemistry perhaps, propane behaves in a direct injection engine even better than it does in a port injected engine. And so as we see the matriculation of DI into the marketplace, we'll continue to see what for a user would result in better fuel economy and a lower operating cost. For us, we see it even as a reduced initial cost because we're using more of the stock components than we used to use. So we're really having tremendous success, not only on operating costs, but on also initial costs. And then we continue to see, because we're more fuel efficient, we continue to see better emissions. In many of these engines today, we cannot even find particulate matter, whether you want to measure it by particle size or mass. It kind of gives you an example of the efficiency of the combustion. But clearly, you know, the engines that we see going into the marketplace today in, you know, light duty cars and trucks, these, you know, high ratio boosted engines behave so well in propane. And we're really looking forward to this next generation of engines into medium duty trucks, because we know it just makes a better engine. And I think it's a classic example of what innovation in the industry is doing to really hasten the speed of acceptance of propane autogas. I'm going to turn it over with that as a perfect segue to a company that really has been leading in innovation. And so I'm going to turn it over now to you, Chelsea, and let you finish up this conversation.
Thank you very much, Tucker. I appreciate it. So I hope everybody can see my screen now, but like Cassie and Tucker mentioned, I'm Chelsea Uphouse. I'm the marketing manager for Roush CleanTech, and I appreciate a few minutes to talk to you guys about what we've been doing on the propane side and in the medium-duty truck world and school bus. But before I get started on the products, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of who Roush is. A lot of people know us as the racing team, and that is all the same Roush. We have 4 different divisions. Roush Industries is really our backbone. That's the engineering arm of Roush, where we do all of our prototype testing and a lot of work with the major OEMs, Ford, GM, and Chrysler, as well as many others. Of course, we have our racing side, which we have many drivers out there. We've been a pretty winning team in the years past, and we're still doing pretty well. We're hoping for another good year this time around. Roush Performance is our high horsepower Mustang and F-150 division. So we make cars go really fast, and we make sure that they look cool while they're doing it. And then CleanTech is our alternative fuels division. This is the one that people on this call are probably most familiar with. We do propane class 4 through 7 vehicles, as well as school buses, and then we've also just recently gotten into CNG school buses as well. And that leads us into our product lineup. Like I mentioned, we do have class 4 through 7. We work primarily with Ford, so all of our white fleet, our commercial trucks, are all Ford vehicles. So we do everything from the E450 to the F450 all the way up to the F750. And then we also work in the strip chassis market as well, in the F53s and the 59s. And then we have a partnership with Blue Bird and Microbird on the Type A and Type C school buses. All of our products are EPA and CARB certified, and they also maintain Ford's factory warranty. So between us, Ford, and Blue Bird, your warranty is covered for any part of the vehicle that may have an issue. All of our products have experience no loss of horsepower, torque, or towing capacity. So it's going to drive similar to the gasoline or diesel vehicle that your drivers are used to. That's always an important thing, is getting driver buy-in with these alternative fuel vehicles, and they won't see much of a difference. And then in terms of service, all of the service work on our vehicles can be done with your standard diagnostic tools. So with the Ford equipment, any Ford gasoline vehicle can be worked on, as well as a Ford propane vehicle. And what we're really excited about, Tucker alluded to it, but we do have certification with 0.05 NOx on our propane products. So that's on the Ford 6.8 liter V10 engine. We are certified to 0.05. We're definitely still working to get to the lowest standard like Cummins is. But right now, this is the lowest propane offering in the marketplace, and we're pretty excited that we did get there, especially compared to where the standards used to be. Obviously, back in the 70s, you were looking at 4.0 for your standard for NOx. And now the Bluebird school bus, as well as the class 4 through 7 Ford trucks, are all certified to 0.05 grams per brake horsepower hour. So we're 75% cleaner than the 0.2 standard right now. And we want to make sure that we're continuing to strive to get as low as we can with that, especially with this Volkswagen settlement, since the focus is NOx reduction. We're going to continue to promote the 0.05 and continue to really get as low as we can in terms of our NOx, emissions. So a few of the markets that we focus on that fit right into the Volkswagen settlement. The first one, of course, is school bus, which Tucker talked about. This here shows a deployment map of all of the propane school buses throughout the country. These are Bluebird specific, so we're missing a few of the other manufacturers on here, but you can see where the mix is. We are in almost every state, so we're just missing 3 at this point. And with the Volkswagen settlement focusing on school bus and with its focus on NOx reductions, this is hopefully going to really kickstart the number of propane buses that are out there in the market. We're already over 9,000, and we're continuing to grow every day. Right now it's real busy because we're trying to get all the buses delivered before back to school season starts. So us and Bluebird, we're working really hard to get more propane buses in the field right now. We already have more than 700 school districts running propane. So we hope to continue to grow that as this VW money comes about and as more districts continue to take a look at propane and see that that is a great option for their fleet. Another market that we focus on is what we call paratransit. So that's the smaller buses in the transit industry. These are typically the E450 chassis that you put a shuttle bus body on it. We have about 40 or 50 transit agencies operating the propane systems throughout the country. Right now they're pretty isolated or focused on different areas just because, as we found out, word of mouth works really well to help with adoption, and every transit agency wants to see that somebody else has been successful in their area before they take a look at it. But this is one of our fastest growing industries, right along there with school bus, so we're excited that transit bus was a focus on the Volkswagen settlement, because hopefully we can put some money towards the paratransit and take a look at propane for that, because propane is a great fit for these buses. The third market that we focus on is food and beverage. The delivery trucks, that has been a really fast growing segment for us. So they typically use a class 6 or 7 truck, and these are your water delivery, these are your bread delivery trucks. Nestle Waters has been a really big advocate for propane, and they've deployed hundreds of trucks throughout the country in various states. So the way that they're doing it is taking a look at what areas do they need to replace their trucks, and then putting a big grouping of propane trucks there, and they're continuing to replace the older diesel buses with new propane. The Little Bites truck there is a Bimbo truck, and they are nationwide and also all throughout North America, and so they are deploying vehicles across the country as well. Like Tucker mentioned, infrastructure is a really key selling point for propane, just because it is so scalable, and you're also able to put it right on location, and it's pretty cost effective. So it's been a really good option for these types of trucks that have many different locations, because you can still put a propane station on each of your yards. And it's great that the class 4 through 7 trucks were included in the VW consent decree. We've been putting together projects to try and replace some of these types of vehicles as well, and advocating really for the school bus, the transit side, and then class 4 through 7 in all of our Volkswagen outreach efforts. And that's all I had. Cassie, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks so much. That was great. And now, folks, I know that we are over time. Thank you all for staying on late. We have received a few questions. If you do have any questions, it sounds like the best way to do that is to actually just send me an email. Again, it is cpowers@nasio.org. The first question that we have is actually for Hugh. Hugh, we have a question about natural gas vehicles. Our understanding is that there are special requirements for the maintenance facilities that house the natural gas powered buses. Is that true?
Yeah, so good question. So it depends on the type of fuel in which you're using. LNG does require a different set of standards for bringing the asset into the building. LNG systems typically, as you know, they're minus 260 degrees. It's a liquefied gas is basically what it is. As it warms up, it has to vent. So we don't see an awful lot of LNG powered vehicles being bought today as they were probably 5 or 6 years ago, which drove a great deal of sort of, I'd say, angst or apprehension on how to do those assets. But depending on the states in which you operate today, a CNG fuel system doesn't require an awful lot with regards to just shutting off the main valve and working on those assets in the buildings. And all of the buildings that Cummins builds now to service this equipment are natural gas certified.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, and Kent and Leslie, we have questions for you as well. In the real world application of electric buses, what does the kilowatt hour per mile look like?
So they're asking about not the diesel gallon equivalent, but the kilowatt hours per mile. It's around
Correct.
2.15 to 2.17. I'd have to look up, see specifically, but it's over 2.
Great. And just out of curiosity, how does that translate to an equivalent for gasoline or diesel buses?
16 to 17 is what we're showing from the fleets that we're looking at so far.
Thank you. All right, we have another question also. Tucker has raised the issue of cost effectively for NOx reduction, but would love to get some more clarification from the other alternative fuels. What is the cost effectivity of $1 per pound basis on the technologies mentioned? Kent and Leslie, could we start with you on that?
Well, on a cost basis, it's really for us, it's really contingent on the miles traveled on a given bus route in an annual basis, because we have to do a formula based on the miles, and the more miles, the more cost effective it becomes, I guess is the best way to put it. A bus that does 25,000 miles a year is much less cost effective than one that does 40 or 50,000, which is interestingly enough why on the electric side for now, there's the school bus model is a little bit less attractive because they just don't run enough miles and they don't travel regularly enough to have the numbers pencil out. So I can't give you specific numbers, but we do it for specific routes based on the miles and the type of vehicle it's replacing in terms of the cost effectiveness.
Thank you. And Hugh, could you also speak to that on NG buses?
Yeah, we have the same challenge on miles. So the cost effectiveness of reducing NOx is really going to be contingent on how many miles you're going to accumulate on an annual basis. And to be honest with you, I've really never run those numbers. We've taken a sort of a quantum leap in NOx reduction, and we still have some more steps to take in the coming years. But we've never measured that on a cost basis, though. But again, it would be contingent upon the amount of miles you're going to accumulate on an asset. So if you look in the Class 8 business, those guys are operating 100,000, 120,000 miles a year, whereas bus transit refuse, it is not. So it's going to be, but the life of the assets is another thing you have to take into play as well. And bus refuse and transit, those our engines are operating before midlife 8 or 10 years. So there's a lot of variables you get to factor in to come up with a cost on that, I guess is the point. And I think that's what Kent was saying.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
So I don't have any other thoughts or questions, so I think that we will go ahead and wrap up the webinar. A huge thank you to our speakers, Kent, Leslie, Hugh, Tucker, and Chelsea, for taking the time to give the presentations. We will be posting a recording of the webinar as well as copies of each of the presentations online. If you do have any other questions, again, you can contact me. We'll be able to get the answers from each of our panelists. Thank you again, and have a good day.